Starting or resuming the recording. I am not sure if you'll all get a message on your screens that have you acknowledge the recording and then you click continue. I see that in some Zoom meetings and not others, but I did want to announce that this as a public meeting is being recorded. My name is Laura Myers. I am the co-chair of UNNC's Planning and Zoning Committee, and John's sitting back down and he can introduce himself.
I am John Arnold. I am a at-large representative from Jefferson Park.
And the
co-chair of this fine, well-run
perfectly right.
committee.
Right. So I'm going to share the screen with our agenda and simultaneously talk a little bit about the protocols of this meeting and show you the agenda. So UNNC, or United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, for its committees, we only appoint / elect our chairs and co-chairs, and otherwise for the committees, not the governing board, anyone who is present and participating in any given committee meeting is essentially a member of the committee for the duration of that meeting. So that means they may vote, they may make a motion, and fully participate in the meeting. So I'm showing on the screen share the agenda for tonight, and we're in item 1, welcome, call to order, introductions, and approval of the agenda. And what you're seeing is the agenda. So what I need is a motion to approve the agenda and a second.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
And is there a second? From anyone? That's not.
I second the motion.
And who was that?
David Saffer.
Thank you. David Saffer has seconded. I'm going to stop the screen share because when I do this, I can't see anybody. And so to vote, because there's only something like 12 of us, if you've been on Zoom before, you probably know this, but if you take your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the word participants. Click on that and you'll not only then see all the participants, but you should see the ability to raise your hand, a little blue hand that you can raise. And for our purposes for voting, you can raise that same blue hand. So all those in favor of approving the agenda, if you would please raise your blue hand, except for John and I have to raise our actual hand because we were the co-hosts. So I only see a couple. I see 3. Okay, look, take your hands down. Is anybody opposed to approving the agenda?
Okay.
Okay, seeing that.
Or I can be your eyes on the participant role if you want to.
Right. I appreciate that. So so the first item on the agenda should be rather quick, I think. Oh, not necessarily. First item on the agenda is public comments. And for this, anybody here may talk about any topic that is not on the agenda for 1 or 2 minutes. So does anybody raise your hand if you have any public comments?
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. I'm not on. I'm on my phone. I'm not on the virtual Zoom, but I don't want to be anonymous. I just want to address a nuisance issue in the West Adams district with loud music that's been going on for quite about 7 months.
Okay.
And I don't know if the neighborhood council can help out with that.
This is a good time to bring it up. We're not allowed to respond, but we may be able to either agenda it here or refer it to the proper part of our neighborhood council.
Oh, okay. Well, it's they have an authorized gym at a house on West Adams, and this problem has been going on for about 7 months now.
So that is a planning and zoning issue.
Right.
It sounds like. Is it a business, ma'am?
No, it's actually a residence, but they have an unlawful gym in
Okay,
the driveway of the house.
Okay, so, and is it within our neighborhood council area, meaning Adams and what street?
It's between 8th and 9th.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, because we can't take any action here, but you can email me. My neighborhood council email is Laura. You can see, oh no, you can't. You're on the phone. My neighborhood council email is Laura, Laura, and then a period.
Phone went out.
Laura, can we post that on the chat?
She's on the phone. She can't see.
What is it? Laura?
Laura, Laura, and then a period. Then my last name, Myers, Meyers, at UNNC.org. So if you'll email me the address, well, just email me and then we'll talk back and forth in email, okay?
Okay.
And then
So
you
let me repeat
you
that.
won't be anonymous at that point with me though, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Be anonymous on the meeting, but not with me.
Okay. So it's LRA.Myers, MEYERS at UNC.org.
UNNC, United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, UNNC.org.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Okay. Are there any other public comments?
I have a logistical comment. Dana is the co-host right now. I'm not. I can't post anything on the general chat. Can you?
How did that happen?
I don't know.
How did you? Oh, because I made a mistake. I meant.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Got it. That worked. I can now do everybody.
Okay. Cool.
Thanks.
So, so the next, if there's no other public comment, the next item on the agenda, UNNC received a notice of a proposed demolition at 2115 4th Avenue. So that's at just south of 21st Street, 2 blocks south of Washington on 4th Avenue in the Arlington Heights Character Residential Overlay District. And it's the demolition of the garage, which normally we'd probably ignore, but the garage is almost identical to the house in terms of its architecture. And the building and safety clearance sheet doesn't show anything for a clearance for this overlay district. And under that address, there's no application for construction. Turns out there is application to construct a unit, 1 unit and a rec room in the rear yard, but apparently on the side of the yard that is this, where the garage is, rather than on the rest of the rear yard. It's a quite large, like 10,000 or 10,200 square foot lot. So I am unclear why there's no CPIO clearance, and I'm unclear why whatever they're building couldn't incorporate or be adjacent to the garage. The next door neighbor has also a large, units, so 2.5 story in the rear units on their, I'm trying to think how to say it, on their north side. So it makes more sense for this project to be on this property's south side. So the 2 tall units would be together at the rear. But at this moment in time, I'm just most concerned about the fact that there's no clearance. Normally, you cannot demolish a historic structure in these zones if it's been identified as a contributor. So, John, do you have any thoughts on? I mean, well, the question is, do we object?
Well, my first thought is the CPIO process. Whether the garage is, the assessment is it perhaps could be part of the overlay zone. Whether it is or not, seems like the process is wrong. That
you're saying the process should include the garage or should not? Because I will tell you that
shouldn't include an ability to demo something that could be.
Well, yeah, Lambert has not allowed other nearby demolitions of garages.
So it seems to me it's a process thing. Whether the garage is incorporated or kept or not, I think is up to discussion. And but we haven't been able to be part of that discussion, and it seems like the city's not putting it into the right pipeline. So I think that to me is the issue, is that it's not going into the correct process.
Well, the immediate deadline is, the normal thing is 30 days after posting. So we received a notice that has a notice date of December 22nd or so, but the property as of yesterday was not posted, but it's a very short time frame to make an objection. So my question is, should we be recommending to the governing board that UNNC write a letter of objection at this stage? And the objection would be to slow it down to see what's going on, I guess. There's no CPIO clearance. That's the issue for me. I don't know if it's been reviewed or not been reviewed, but a demolition shouldn't normally be permitted without that.
That to me is the issue. It should have had a CPIO clearance, even if it was an easy one or whatever the process was. I've seen lesser things have a CPIO clearance.
Right.
So so I would opt for consistency in clarity versus randomness.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of interrupting you a second time. The technical process right now is we have anyone has 30 days to object after posting. So we may or may not have another board meeting ahead of us, but you know, if it was posted today, for example, UNNC would run out of time before the February board meeting. We don't have time to investigate. The question is, do we want to write a 2-paragraph objection to log it in before the 30 days?
Anyone have an opinion from the neighborhood/committee?
Right. Anyone who lives.
Please raise your hand. Anyone who has a comment?
Okay, so David doesn't care, Ethan doesn't care. all of you alls who live in HPOZs, what would you do there? Because it's a similar.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry that I thought you were saying people that live in that neighborhood.
No, anyway.
Well, no, because I wouldn't know who does.
I mean, my feeling is no demolition should ever be approved until we know what's going to replace it. And you know, I thought that was the general practice of any historic permit, so that we don't end up with parking lots where historic buildings used to be.
So this is it's slightly nuanced because they aren't clearing the lot. It is a garage and it's not a historic district, it's a character overlay zone.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less than or different
HPOZ
than.
light, perhaps, that's what they call them.
But if it's HPOZ light, then it should at least have some kind of, because if it's not this, is it something else? So
Yeah.
I would object to the process. I don't necessarily have an affinity for the garage over an ADU or what the design is, but the fact that someone asks the question and gets it on the clearance sheet, I think should be uniform and not at the discretion of the planner about what they deem as character contributing or not.
Right. Well, usually, see, this is my concern. Usually stuff like this is now referred to Lambert-Giesinger, and it just doesn't even appear that that has happened. So
what's the easiest thing for us to do? Not that I'm looking for easiest, but expedited thing, just to write a letter saying UNNC objects to there not being a proper CPIO review of this accessory structure before its demolition. And we seek to have consistent application of the CPIO for all changes within the character overlay.
okay. I don't know what the letter needs to say. I don't think building and safety cares about being consistent application of CPIO. This is a building and safety, and what's required is to raise an objection. The objection, what you just said, is fine. We can compose it, I suppose, for tomorrow night. Again, I haven't seen the plans. I don't know. I honestly do not know why whatever is being built couldn't be built on the southerly side of the lot, thus retaining the garage or its facade if the garage itself is in the way. I mean, I don't know. I have driven by, and again, this is a 1914 garage, 1914 Craftsman airplane bungalow with multiple gables, and they match. So this is not some sort of random garage, and it's visible from the street. So, but I don't know what the project is because the way the building and safety notices are sent, they don't tell you anything. So I only know what I can see on the building and safety website. And there is nothing on the planning department website showing the plans. We don't have to decide tonight. It is on tomorrow night's agenda. Be good if we decide tonight, but we can decide tomorrow night if you want to ponder further, John.
We should make any recommendation we can to make it easier on the governing board to proceed.
Well, I'm going to try and grab Ben.
So I don't know what, so do you have an idea of what you want to see versus, I mean, that's different.
Oh, well, you mean, do I have a oar in this water? Kinda. I mean, this is a situation, if I want to expand, this is a situation where the neighbors descended on the open house when the realtor was advertising this property as a development opportunity, and it was after the CPIO was adopted, and it's a multifamily zoning, but it's a low zoning, and there were like 8 neighbors descending and yelling and screaming and handing them materials as to how this is one of the more significant properties on the block and so on and so forth. And that disclosure may or may not have happened with the people who ultimately bought the house. And what happened next was they gutted the house without permits and got in big trouble with building and safety. And then now there's this. So there's a whole background on this that I hope doesn't, I don't live there, so it shouldn't make me recuse, but I happen to know the whole background on it because I'm friends with several of the neighbors and they told me this. So, so my opinion is whatever could possibly be built back there could be built on the remaining probably 3,000 square foot of rear yard lot. I mean, it's a quite large lot and plenty of room on the middle to southerly side of the rear. So I have no idea if there's a reason why the garage is in the way of that. And John, you might, I mean, again, we don't know. We've not been informed. We have 30 days from whenever it's posted, technically, not 30 days from the date on the letter, but they might argue it's 30 days from the date on the letter, so we don't have any time. We don't have much time now either. We've just taken up a whole bunch of time. So I wasn't clear. You were sort of suggesting a motion that has more to do with CPIO process. That's okay too, but does it include the word object to the demolition? Because that's the case that's before us. A demolition.
There's not enough information for me. I don't want to create a situation where it's the only solution or the solution or no case solution, and there's been no inspection of or even declaration that the garage is contributing. There's a lack of information. So the only thing I can think of is that it's a general objection that there's not a CPIO, and but I'm not sure that won't do anything to help this situation. So I don't know.
All right. Well, if we have no motion, we can move on. But it's still on tomorrow night's agenda. So perhaps we can find something out from Michelle saying tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. So moving on, unless anyone has any objection. The next item on our agenda, and Dana, you will be up, is case number ZA 2020-2662, SPP-CU. So ZA stands for Zoning Administration. SPP is specific plan something, but it's an approval. And CU is for conditional use. This is a proposed project that will basically demolish the existing buildings that are on the southeast corner of 30th and Crenshaw, which is a youth center and a religious building, and in place of those, construct a new commercial office building with 54,874 square feet of floor area and subterranean parking. And the requested entitlements include a specific plan approval and requested relief from a 5-foot landscape buffer requirement. And Dana Sales will be presenting that. Is that correct? There you are.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get my tech correct, so just bear with me for a sec. So
And if it doesn't work, I also have it. And I could share the screen if you need me to.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you guys for having me. Forgive me if I'm looking sideways. I have multiple screens here. John knows the deal from many other presentations. So hopefully this works.
There you go.
You have my share screen? Okay,
Yes.
great. So for introduction purposes, I think most of you know who I am. Dana Sales with 360 on behalf of the project. I am here tonight. I think you also know Jason Friedman in my office, who is the project manager for this. He's out on paternity leave, so I'm actually pinch hitting for him. And so Sophia Greenberg in my office is on the call, just taking notes so that I can listen. Also on behalf of the client, Oliver Baker from CAM Group is here somewhere in
I see him.
black screen.
Well, I don't see
any-
him, but I see his name.
Any ownership questions that you can get to. We have a pretty straightforward presentation, so I'll get through this to get on the right screen. So it'll, okay, great. Okay, so we're talking about parcel. It's 3 lots at the southeast corner of 30th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard. It is currently, it's actually currently a series of vacant buildings. It used to be a youth center, part of the church. They've since vacated voluntarily and relocated to a different location. It's about a little under 12,000 square feet of land. Just some pictures of the existing lot. Again, it was a 1-story building. It was used as a youth center. And their parking lot, and it's currently vacant. And I think as a result of other projects that we know in the area, once properties vacate, it's very important that we make sure to move things along so that they don't become nuisance properties, as tends to happen kind of up and down this corridor when you've got vacant and unoccupied spaces. So from a technical standpoint, again, I'm sorry, I transposed the numbers. The lot is, again, 3 parcels. We're bounded by Crenshaw to the west, 30th Street to the north, and an alley to the east. We've got low density residential to the east, again, R2 single and duplex properties. The property is zoned C2. It is in sub-area A of the specific plan. We are technically a TOC tier 3 site, although this is an office project, so the TOC designation is not applicable here. It's just a point of information. Enterprise zone, I think you all know the overlays. The specific plan here allows a project that's a 2.5 FAR. We're not seeking any additional incentives or any of the bonuses under the plan, eligible really for mixed use and residential projects. So we're complying with the plan. 45-foot base height limit. This also area of sub-area A is part of the transition to the TOD, where we have maximum parking requirements that aren't applicable to properties to the north. So as we get into this, I think one of the things we are subject to as well is a maximum parking provision in order to encourage pedestrian activation as you get closer to the station to the south. The project we're going to show you is very straightforward 3-story office building, about 55,693 square feet. It's a floor area of 2.3. We're permitted 2.5, 3 stories, 45 feet. 2 levels of subterranean parking with 91 parking spaces, which is compliant with the 90% maximum. Code would otherwise require 111 spaces. And we actually have 2 open space areas provided as part of the project, which isn't something you typically see in an office project, as an amenity to the potential tenants in the future. Going through the plans very quickly, 2 levels again of subterranean parking. The first level subterranean has 40 parking spaces, as well as some accessory uses for the project. The second level is 51 subterranean parking spaces. They're all standard parking spaces, not tandem, meaning standard and compact, but they're not tandem spaces. Primary access to the garage in the project are off of 30th Street in compliance with DOT's preference to not have curb cuts to the extent feasible on Crenshaw and to maximize pedestrian activation. So we have our main lobby and pedestrian area off of Crenshaw, main vehicular entrance off of 30th. 30th is also signalized, and so there is an opportunity to make turns out of there relatively safely. The site plan, again, it's an office project, so there's no internal demising. The plans you're going to see are going to be very, very basic. We are as well, even though it's not part of the project, designing the project from a structural standpoint in the event that there was an opportunity or an interest for a small retail tenant on the corner. The building will be designed to accommodate future retail, but it's not currently part of our project and would be consistent with the specific plan, and the CPIO would not require additional entitlements for us to be able to convert a portion of the building later, since it's all non-residential. Again, these are second floor plan. Second floor plan is just open floor plan. It would be demised accordingly to tenants' needs at that point in time. On the 3rd floor, there is a small patio area provided for ideally what would be a single user tenant with a nice amenity space specifically for that user. And then we are providing a small kind of common area amenity deck on the roof of the building oriented towards Crenshaw to give the tenants of the building a little bit of opportunity for lunch and outdoor space and a little bit of relief. It is oriented again towards Crenshaw and 30th, away from the residential, consistent with the design of most of the other projects I think we've showed you on Crenshaw, where everything is oriented towards the commercial boulevard to minimize noise and any impacts on the neighbors to the east. And then going through just simple elevations is a very simple 3-story concrete, a lot of glass and glazing. The project is consistent with the specific plans, design guidelines for a minimum of 50% of the ground floor to be transparent. It's very simple architectural form. A view of the corner as well, looking to, this is 30th and then Crenshaw. The primary entrance to the project is kind of in here where these people are. A rear alley photo, just rendering, again, relatively simple. The building is set back off of the alley quite a bit to accommodate for our required transformer and some access and some landscaping. And then as part of our entitlements, again, a very simple entitlement request. We have compliance with the specific plan. We're asking for no deviations from the specific plan, the CPIO, or the municipal code, except for one deviation from commercial corner requirements that would require a 5-foot landscape buffer along Crenshaw, which is actually inconsistent with the specific plan's requirement for a maximum 5-foot setback along Crenshaw, and buildings to be built up to the property line for pedestrian activation. And so we have a small request to deviate from that requirement. I will go back to the there are opportunities and there is articulation at the ground floor, for vestibule, et cetera, but we don't have the building set back 5 feet from the street, as that's not really the character of Crenshaw Boulevard, and we're trying to be consistent with the specific plan. And so that is really our one entitlement request. We do have a setback on the 30th Street side, which we felt was very important, and because that is the entry to a residential street and kind of wrapped it in the corner, as you see here. But for the bulk of the main pedestrian artery, the building is really set to the street, again, consistent with other buildings. And this kind of shows you again the entry to the garage to the west. That's really our entire presentation. It's not a complicated project, and we can leave it to questions for you.
Right.
To the extent
So-
we can answer.
Thank you. I will have some questions / comment about, just keep in mind the word trees.
Okay.
But in the meantime, let's call on everybody else. So
And-
if you want to raise your hand,
And I'll go
and
back here.
yeah, no, I see trees on the plan, but not
Yeah.
on the
Not on the
other,
rendering.
not on the other thing.
Right.
But I'm gonna defer because my question isn't, do you have trees? So
Okay.
I'm gonna defer. David has his hand up, then Ethan. David Saffer.
Thank you. Couple of questions. First, just to clarify, and just want to confirm this for my knowledge or my, I guess, clarification purposes. This does not impact the historic theater that's on the same block. It's up to that lot, but does not include it.
Correct. Does not include any historic structures. There's no housing. We're not displacing anything other than what used to be the youth center.
Okay. The second question I have is in relation to the project, I believe from the same developer directly across 30th to the north. How does it relate to that project?
They're distinct and different. They actually have different, and Oliver, you may have to clarify here, but they are under different actually ownership structures and different funds and operating completely differently. We started this actually project with the original owner of the site, and CIM has since bought the property.
Okay, so the architecturally, there's no relationship between the two or anything like that. They're
Well,
distinct projects unto themselves.
Yeah, do you want to
No,
respond?
they're
to
almost
that,
they're
Oliver?
almost exactly alike.
Oh, they
You
are.
line
This
them up.
is
They're almost-
Oliver. So architecturally, they speak to each other. The intent is that they speak to each other, right? One architect saw the design of the other architect when they were designing, but functionally, they are entirely separate projects. As Deanna mentioned, there's no functional linkages between them. They don't share anything, right? It's just two office buildings next to each other that speak to each other architecturally. So Ethan, yes, you're right. They're not exactly alike, but they do have similar architectural language, and that is intentional.
In particular, I guess what I'm getting at is in their design, the alignment of the entry to things like parking off of 30th. How do those line up versus one another? Those types of things.
They don't have a relationship in that sense.
Right, because the other one is on the northwestern corner, right? Is on the northwestern side. This is on the southeastern side. So they
No,
don't.
the other
No.
one's on the northeastern side. It's right across the street.
It's directly across 30th.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'm having other.
Yeah, so I guess to answer the question directly, the project to the north is accessed. There are two access points. One is via the alley, and the other is via Crenshaw.
Okay, so there is no entry on that one from 30th, so this would be distinct to this project. Okay.
That's correct.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Hey, Laura, I guess.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I know, you're next.
I didn't
Oh,
know
sorry.
if you were like acknowledging me or not.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
all
I was,
good.
I'm doing the read a chat, look at another project, and
It's
try to
all
remember
good.
what-
It's all
who put their
good.
hands up.
Yes, it's all good, Laura. And hello to Oliver.
Hey,
I know
good to see you
I'm
again.
good to see you again too, Oliver, and to Dana. Good to see you again as well. And so my comment about the look of the building, I think it looks great, and that I'm happy that it does look similar I would say that they look like siblings to the project, just to the north of it. The same set, I don't have an issue with the setback. There's the same setback that the project to the north has, the 5-foot setback off of Crenshaw. My only ask from the community would be the same thing I asked Oliver at their presentation a few months ago, that there is some form of local hire initiative for this project. I appreciate the opportunity to have a retail space there, and I would ask for the retail space if it could be offered to local shop owners, business owners, and some things I've talked to Oliver about their similar project across the street. There's always a need for local residents to have at-home businesses or food trucks to want to work and build a business in the community that they live in. And a lot of times they don't know these projects are coming till after they're built, and so that they can have access to working in the community where they live in, where they were raised in, where their moms are here, their grandparents are here, versus going out and seeking a restaurant from Venice or San Gabriel Valley or places like that have happened on other projects. But I'm happy with the way the project looks. I'm happy that that corner is going to be revitalized, and I look forward to working with Dana, Oliver, and the developer on this project.
Oliver, can you talk about your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ethan, one thing that I'm actually happy to say you inspired from our conversations on 2922 Crenshaw. And look, I know it's not everything that we'd all hope for, you never asked for, but what we've done so far, just as of today or yesterday, we've gone live on a website for 2922 Crenshaw, and we're going to start putting up signs on the project site as well, and it'll have a link for bidding opportunities for local contractors, and it'll say that local contractors are encouraged to comply and will be considered willing to apply. And it'll also have a link to our leasing. So if somebody wants to lease the space, they can get in touch right away with one of our in-house leasing brokers. And it'll also have a link to CIM's career page, directly to CIM's career page. So if people walk by the site and think, how can I get involved? Is there a job opportunity for me on this project or other CIM projects? It's going to take them directly there. There's no looking up who's the developer, what's going on here, how do I get more information? It's going to be plastered on the site. And we intend to do the same thing on this project at 3000 Crenshaw, develop a similar website so that when people walk by, drive by, there's a direct path of access for anyone in the community to figure out how to directly get involved. And in addition, we're also plan on having it, we're still working on setting it up, but we're hoping that it's an interactive website, right, where people can ask questions. We're going to be posting construction updates. So if there's any road closures, anything like that, it's a two-way communication with the community so that, you know, again, it's not a faceless developer. And you and I, Ethan, have talked about this, but our intent is always to have a point of contact for anyone in the community so that it's not obscure or obfuscated. There's not, you know, you have to call the CIM main line and figure out how to get in touch with someone. It's here's the contact, here's the project, you know, send an email, call anytime. And, you know, Ethan, you have my cell. And I'm happy to give anyone my cell phone as well. So it's just, that's the type of relationship we're hoping to foster. And these are kind of the baby steps that you and I talked about, and we're getting them rolling. And we're just going to pick up steam on this one.
Hey, Oliver, thank you. This is exciting. It's what we talked about, it's what we had community meetings about, and it's showing that CIM Group wants to be a good neighbor. I can say for the projects that I've seen in the Crenshaw district, this is the first one that I've had where I've seen where there's a website, you're going to put information on the gate so the community knows what's coming, and it's not, like you said, a nameless, faceless developer from over there somewhere on the west side just coming in to not be a good neighbor. So thank you. Express my thanks to Shaul. I'm gonna check out the website tomorrow. And I appreciate you guys setting the trend
Sure.
for this in the Crenshaw district.
I think it's 2922crenshaw.com. I think we're trying to make it as simple as possible.
Got it.
And I think we already just bought the domain name for 3000 Crenshaw. So we're going to be
I can put
getting
it in
that one up and
chat
running
if I
too.
can find it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Jasmine? Or Jasmine, remind me, is it Jasmine or Jasmine?
It's Jasmine.
Okay, because I need to know that for tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's Jasmine. So thank you guys for your presentation. My questions are actually sort of related to what Ethan was addressing. And so I actually had two questions. So one, I do appreciate you guys making sure that the community is well aware of sort of what's coming to the neighborhood and what you all are developing. But I'm wondering if there are going to be any like efforts or incentives beyond that. Like, are there going to be special rates for small, because it's an office building, correct? Not like a full retail space, or did I misunderstand that?
No, it's an office, and it's. I think without kicking this one to Oliver, I think they're interested in tenanting the building. There's a lot of new housing in the area. There hasn't really been a lot of new job creation. The spaces are divisible to take smaller or larger tenants. I don't think it is in their business plan to necessarily offer reduced rates to one tenant base versus the other. They're interested in tenanting the building and making sure it's full and not vacant, to that extent. Typically, you don't see small businesses go into new Class A office buildings because of, some of the logistics of that. They tend to want to be in, smaller, cozier spaces. But I think that as we've talked as a team, the intent for both of these buildings is to be able to accommodate anybody that's interested in being in this kind of building, right? It's not for everyone. It's not for all businesses.
Right. Yeah, I do recognize that, but I think I would appreciate sort of seeing something like that to accommodate folks from the community who may not have the capital that, say, like some, I don't know, like Santa Monica based startup or tech company or whatever that's trying to expand is going to move into. So something of that nature would be helpful, especially if there's like nonprofits or community groups that are interested that aren't able to afford the rent of such a space, but that, obviously you're building on Crenshaw Boulevard in the middle of South Central. And so I think that would be something I'd be interested to see. And then my next question is related. I'm wondering if there have been any conversations with the church next door, West Angeles, and how they feel about the development, and if any sort of offers have been extended to them or considerations have been made, if they need that space or if they plan to rent out that space, if there's any priorities for them to be able to occupy that, any space within the building as well.
So can I ask a clarification question? You're talking about the Angelus Church, like the big church, or the church that's across the street and owns
I can take this
property?
one.
Yeah.
Dana, it's okay.
Just so that you're.
Yeah. So, Jasmine, this is Oliver. I'm with the owner and the developer. We purchased the site from the church, so the church is fully aware of the business plan. They've reviewed the drawings. They've reviewed the project. They have not yet, but they most likely will issue a support letter. They are definitely fully abreast. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the church's plans, but I think the church either has or is about to break ground on a new youth center, a new office complex right next to their existing center down on 36th. Yeah, Laura probably knows more about it than I do.
Well, they presented. I mean, we've been seeing one after another of these presentations. So if I'm not mistaken, one of the reasons they're able to do the project they really want to is that they were able to sell this property and the one just to the north. I mean, I think that's their funding, a good chunk of the funding source. So they're consolidating their operations to the site just behind the cathedral and building new there. So you know, and also because we've seen so many, this right now we have 4, you know, purpose-built office buildings on their way in this area. These 2, one I just read about on Urbanized today, that's on Jefferson. It looks like the photo says 3300 Jefferson, but it's just west of Crenshaw. And then as well, right down the road, east of West Angeles, we've got an office building coming up called the Depot. And John, do you remember, is that 10th Avenue and 36? And then the former dairy is not going to be general office, but it's going to be offices for Sweet Greens. So, you know, there's just a lot of office construction in the pipeline. I have no idea if there's going to be that many businesses that want offices, but I'm not in the business of second guessing developers. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So, but anyway, Jasmine, the church obviously is aware of this. Did you have any further questions at the moment, or can I call on the next person?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor Fife.
Hey, so I'm Taylor. Thanks for having me at your meeting. So I live on Bronson, so just right behind, not right directly behind, but just like a short walk away. So I think this project's pretty cool. Thank you for the presentation. My big question is about the parking. So I noticed that you are using like basically right up to the maximum amount of parking. Even though this is like a TOC3 zone, even though it's about 1,500 feet away from from the expo line, and in just a few months, it'll be 1,500 feet away from the Crenshaw line as well. So it'll really actually be outside of downtown, maybe the best corner for public transportation in all of Los Angeles. So this seems to me like a lot of parking, and our neighborhood, as you probably know, walking around, we have a lot of cars and we have a lot of parking already. You know, we have a giant parking structure with the metro parking that's underutilized. So we have just empty parking spaces all over the neighborhood, lots of cars, and we don't have that many people walking around. So, you know, when I saw this, when I saw the presentation, I really was surprised that you were planning so much parking. And I'm wondering what brought you to that decision and why you didn't, say, do bicycle parking or other types of things that would reduce the amount of traffic, cars that we have in the neighborhood. Really do something that'd be more valuable for us, which would be get people walking around and using the really the best public transportation corridor in all of LA.
Sure. Okay. Let me respond with a relatively technical note. I'm actually looking for one thing in my notes, so I may. So the specific plan is very unique. Both the specific plan and a number of the provisions of some of the CPIUs in the area, where around transit they actually provide, again, maximum. So by the municipal code, we'd be required 111 parking spaces for the amount of square footage that's here. The specific plan essentially says you can provide no less than 50% of the required parking and no more than 90%. So 90% of the required parking would be 100 spaces off of the 111. We're providing 91. So we're actually providing about 80% of what's required by code, instead of, you know, so somewhere in the middle. So we are taking advantage of some of that provision for reduction, but there's still a reality that operationally you need to provide some parking for an office building for 55,000 square feet. It's really not that much to make sure that there's no spillover into the neighborhoods. And I know that I've been involved in countless projects up and down Crenshaw from, you know, basically from the freeway all the way down to Hyde Park, and parking intrusion in the neighborhoods is a big deal, particularly because to the east and up and down here, and Laura can speak to this till she's blue in the face, but there's all these historic preservation zones and old homes that were never built with garages. And so there's a parking demand in the neighborhoods that I think the new projects are very sensitive to not exacerbating any spillover. So I think there's a balance here between operational demand and et cetera, but also the reality that if they were going to dig a second level of parking, they were going to put as many parking spaces as you could fit in both levels, because from a construction standpoint, it's really inefficient to build a half a level of parking. So 91 parking spaces is essentially what fits in those two levels and equates to about 80% of code, which is really less. There is also bike parking, which I alluded to provide. I'm just trying to find the exact number, which I actually can't believe that I omitted on the slide. But we should have, there should be as well, there will be a secured bike room with required long-term bike parking for any employees that are taking the train and are going to come and park, as well as short-term bikes, which will be provided around the site for visitors and guests of the project. I just have to get that number, and I will find it by the time.
I have it.
I'm sure you do. And
because I downloaded.
I have pages on my desk, but not exactly
okay.
not the page that I need.
Okay, here's what we have. And now that I'm looking, I will have some other comments. So you have 11 long-term bicycle parking and 6 short-term. Also, you have only 5 EV charging spaces installed and 19 future EV charging spaces. So I think my commentary would be, please have more EV charging spaces.
So I believe that will change because the green code was updated in the time that between the time we submitted, et cetera. So current code requires 10% of the spaces to be installed and 30% to be ready, another 20% to be ready. Mm-hmm. So the installed number will double
of EV.
Which,
if people don't know what we're talking about, is electric.
Right. Plug-in. I think they'll have to have 9 or 10 installed, and the balance will be ready.
Okay.
Anything that's required by local or California building code at the time the project is in construction, they'll comply with, whether it is current or changes, because we have no vesting provisions on this project.
Okay. And so Taylor, the other thing I will answer, but I'm glad that somebody from CIM is here. The underutilized parking structure shouldn't be underutilized, because if CIM still owns the project on the corner of Jefferson and Bronson, Jefferson to Crenshaw, that includes the Union Bank. All of the employee parking for Union Bank and for the 99-cent store and for the former Bank of Tokyo building is supposed to actually be in that parking structure, so that the parking lot is for customers. But the Union Bank's employees have refused to do that, mostly because I think it's an unpleasant walk. So one of the things we've been talking about as these different projects have been built. So Dana has another project just south of the structure. I'm losing track.
It's directly
36 in Crenshaw.
36.
But it's like, how do we make the walk from Expo to all of these projects nice? How many more trees can we have? How pleasant can it be? Et cetera, et cetera. So that's part of a larger, take a look at the bigger picture conversation. But as well, when the actual metro development project goes in south, on the parcels, Crenshaw and south. Obama, they did not require train parking, right? So now we're back to using this building. So in theory, meaning park and ride. So in theory, the underutilized building should become a little more utilized, and again, to keep the cars out of the neighborhoods, we hope.
And I can
I understand a lot of people. I heard there was a different neighborhood council meeting earlier this week about a proposal to eliminate all parking requirements and in fact make them zero, and the big debate about that. So there's going to be another 20 years of discussion about how do you get there, reduce cars in LA.
Laura, I can attest to that parking lot, trying to park in that parking lot during weekdays to go downtown.
Yeah.
That it is difficult to find an open spot.
Good. Well,
it's
good.
pretty much full on a weekday.
Is,
The church does reserve the top, they have certain floors that they limit, Metro can't park on because it's for their use. But the rest of it is difficult to find an open parking spot if you don't get there early in the day.
Oh, that's interesting. But I'm going to say good, not that I'm glad you can't find parking, but good that it is more utilized than it had been. So Oliver, as long as you're here, UNNC is actually our environmental committee has spent the last month and a half going around and plotting all of the young trees and vacant spots for trees, meaning trees that have died, just already curb cuts on our commercial corridors, because we have a too small, as it turns out, funding project to have a year of watering and maintenance for 25 young trees, trying to focus on Jefferson. Anyway, but it occurs to me that the best way to have more trees maintained, meaning trimmed and the weeds taken out and watered, is if some of the larger property owners along these same corridors join us in the effort to just pay KYCC, not to try and take it on themselves, to do these watering and maintenance projects. So I want to talk to you offline, but I do want to hope that it would never have to be the neighborhood council that pays for the maintenance of trees in front of CIM projects, for example. In other words, I think CIM can't handle it themselves.
And I can direct, let me answer that specific thing directly, which is
Right.
when we plant trees in front of our projects, we typically get revocable permits with the city that allow us to irrigate them. So we do typically take care of the street trees that we plant. So
Right. But what about
you
the
and I
ones that are already planted and sort of suffering along right now and when you do construction? Because there are trees not doing very well in.
Sure.
Yeah.
We would either replace those during construction or somehow bolster them. It doesn't do us any good to have dead trees out in front. So, you and I can talk about it offline if you'd like.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because I kind of would like to help you expand your footprint to maybe some neighboring properties too, because you probably could. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But I want to make sure that one of the things we need to do on Crenshaw, from walking distance from the train stations, so as far north as it would be deemed walking distance, and as far east and west on Expo and Jefferson, would be to make these places good to walk in, so people will take the train and then walk. I mean, in other words, it all kind of works together.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention about that, Laura, I think the thing that makes it most walkable, the thing that would make me want to walk more from the Expo line, is the thing that makes it most difficult, for example, to walk around is cars. When you don't have a crosswalk, when there's a lot of people driving around, the cars are really the thing that make it hard to walk around. And then the thing that makes it easy to walk around is other people walking around with you. So the more extra parking that we have, the worse the walk becomes, and the less parking there is, the better the walk becomes. And the more bikers there are, the better the walk becomes. So I think that was my point with the parking, particularly the actual minimum parking for this development really could all fit on just one floor. It's only 56. Dana, like you said, it's only 56 parking spots. So you don't even need the second garage to comply with any of the codes. And I think it would be a huge benefit for the neighborhood if it would just had a whole level less of parking, and not to mention how much cheaper it would be. And as someone who lives right on South Bronson, I can say parking on South Bronson is easy to find. It's always there. There's no shortage of parking in this area. There's not a parking crisis going on. If anything, it's that we have tons and tons of empty spaces. You guys are the experts. You're going to build the building how you want to, but I think it's tremendously obvious that if one of the parking levels was removed, that would be in a massive benefit for the people that, like me, that live a short distance from this project. And I know I'm one of your stakeholders, one of many stakeholders, and your shareholders and whatever are important too, and you have to do what's best for them. And and whoever is going to rent out this building, you got to do what's best for them. But this is the neighborhood council committee, and I feel obligated to say that as someone that lives near this building, I think it would be better for us if there were less parking and more bike parking.
I'd like to take Taylor on a road show to all my other
Yeah,
neighbors.
me too. My God, can Taylor move into?
You got me for the UNNC. I'll be here.
You need a job.
Goes
You call
beyond
me.
UNNC.
So John,
I mean,
what do you think about what Taylor said?
You know how I feel about parking. It's expensive, and it just more parking means more traffic, means more cars, means more people are incentivized to drive, and I'm all for it.
Which is fine in some places, but this is right next to a train station.
So I generally agree, but I know just from experience that I probably am in a severe minority, yeah, and I agree. I've walked that many times from the garage to the station. It's not pleasant.
No, I mean,
it's dusty and windy. When the wind blows, it's paper and dust. And
yeah, it's not pleasant from the garage to the station. It is definitely not pleasant from the first shopping center, meaning Jefferson and Crenshaw, to the station, because you also have the gas station to walk by. I mean, that 125 feet just isn't pleasant. It will be more pleasant when the big project on the corner of 36 and Crenshaw happens. And we're all talking about on the
east. We can never get our approval letter.
but I mean, it's just not a great pleasant walk. And we keep coming back to that. And this has been years and years. I mean, because Oliver, you weren't here when Jefferson and Crenshaw was done, right?
No, that was before my time at CIM.
Yes, my hair is getting grayer every day. But that was a long and hard fought battle where some of it was a battle between community members and the development team. And some of it was where the community members and the development team were battling the city itself to not have required, oh God, now I'm losing it, 3 feet on Jefferson and 7 feet on Crenshaw dedications. Cause it was like, what are you guys talking about? We want to build these, commercial, we don't want to do that. So we joined together on an appeal on that. So, so it's like, that was the first project. And then as you have seen, we didn't get a grocery store, we got a 99-cent store. And then they sealed off even further the access from Crenshaw into the store. I mean, in other words, we had wanted to have a door on Crenshaw that could be utilized by pedestrians and not have to walk into the parking lot. So I am just happy that these newer projects up and down Crenshaw, and again, also going east on, between Jefferson and Expo, or between 36 and Expo, are coming in play. And I don't think they were overparked. John, can you remember? I don't think Asher's projects, the Luzzatto company, I don't think they were overparked. I don't think they were underparked or overparked. I think they hit that 90% again.
I was going to say they hit the 90%.
And we had pushback at neighborhood council that it was not more parking. Mm-hmm. So, Taylor, we represent kind of a really diverse, populace. So there was more pushback that there wasn't enough than that there was too much.
Right. I understand people that are trying to drive to this project obviously want more parking. But for people that live next door,
I think these projects have in mind that people will take the train. Will they take the train in the next few years post-pandemic? Not sure. But will eventually more people be taking all these trains? I think, of course. That's probably what all the developers of all these different projects are seeing in our future. I think that's why we're seeing these projects.
Just from an urban design standpoint, there's nothing worse for pedestrian activation than vacant sites and parking lots and curb cuts. So the more developments that come in and are oriented with access on the side streets that bring the buildings to the street, which is why we don't want to step back. Honestly, we don't want landscape buffers that basically become trash receptacles and places for people to sleep and cigarette butts, and that's not good for anyone. But as the street edge is formed, for the first time in this area in a long time, things will naturally change. I mean, I think since 3411 got built, the affordable housing project across from the structure, people are walking on that side of the street just because there's a building there. Right? I mean, it's really unpleasant to walk past the parking structure, and the auto body shop, and the church that has no appeal for anybody to get anywhere. So at least on that side of the street where there's people living there, it's a little bit of a better walk.
Right. So the one thing that I'm seeing on this other building that's on Jefferson, just west of Crenshaw, that maybe I could just figure out how to share my screen on this, that I like. Here, I can. I mean, I'm not an architect. I don't know if you can see that, but you see how it actually hits a corner and then has umbrellas on a corner. It sort of just creates a plaza in the corner. And that kind of activation I like as well, but I am not an architect and I'm not going to tell you guys how to design. And that's probably for a restaurant that you're not planning. But otherwise, these buildings all kind of have that same sort of mood. Is mood the right word, John, architecturally? I mean, what I'm saying is it's 3 to 4 stories. They look like office buildings, you know. Yeah. So, and the building that's nearing completion on my corner, which is a mixed use of housing and just one affordable housing, one restaurant space, and then a community room, also has a nice community plaza. So, I think that's always a selling point to get support from the community, but I have no idea yet, since they're all new, if anyone's going to utilize these plazas. So, all right. Are there any other questions, comments?
No. One thing I omitted, Laura, that I should have also said at the beginning. So we actually have our hearing scheduled for February 4th.
Uh-oh. Well, you did omit that because
I did omit
not
that.
on tomorrow night's governing board agenda.
Are we?
You are not, because I didn't
know
that.
So I think we figured, honestly, we got our hearing date right before the holidays. And so I know your next board meeting is on the 4th, which is
the evening of the, yeah.
Right, which we've talked about internally, which I think is fine, but because we saw we weren't on the agenda.
Right, because I wouldn't have put,
So ideally, right, formally, we would love the support of this committee and recommendation to support the project at the board, and we'll go to your next board meeting if that is, the pleasure of this committee.
Right. So in other words, that we would have the board meeting 6 or 7 hours after your hearing. It is what it is. Okay. So John, now I do need some commentary from you, since it sounds like we should take an action.
So yeah, how would that be helpful at all? Say if we did take an action tonight here?
Well, yeah, to go to the hearing,
Yes.
I would, if we took an action here, the only thing I could do is say words out loud at the public hearing that we have a recommendation, but the board would be unable to act until this evening, which would be on February 4th. There's also, before you do this, I also have a question about one of the design elements is, for lack of a better description, an address blade. I mean, the thing that sort of projects up that says 3,000.
Blade.
That goes up and over the height limit. Is that allowed? Is that an exception?
Yeah, within the specific plan, architectural projections can go 20% above the height limit.
Okay. And would it always, no matter what, just be the address and not the name of a building or any sort of advertising?
It will never be advertising.
Well,
or an
3,000,
offsite.
the letters, or numbers, 3000 is advertising, but I mean, it wouldn't be a advertisement for some, that's my question. Is it just always going to be an address? What would this be called? Blade?
It's a blade sign. it would have to be a separate permit if it becomes signage. I think it's building ID, which is what this would be, but if it becomes a signage, it would have to comply to the city. Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of talking to my butt here. That it would have to be a signage permit and that it would have to comply with all the requirements of square footages.
Yeah, it's just a building permit as long as the sign is compliant with the parameters in the code. There's no entitlement and there's no specific permission that's necessary for it. Right? There's a.
But do we like it is the question.
The blade sign?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think blade signs are a character feature that are featured on many historic and non-historic buildings up and down the districts.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Because I was just wasn't sure because it went so taller than the building. I mean, obviously, if you look back at any Art Deco building, it's going to have something cool like that, only in the Art Deco style. All right. So, John, are you proposing a motion of some?
Yeah, I guess I haven't heard any objections. I've heard, I don't know if we want to summarize some of the comments that were made, but I'd like to make a motion to support the project as presented with a specific accolades to the developer for listening to community concerns, for inclusion of local hire and local involvement. What Oliver, what else have you done besides local hire that you described? What was the
Well,
program?
we have made hiring opportunities available to the local community.
So I would say, I just want to note that it's been noted by the committee, that positive. And
Oh,
I wouldn't mind a major public comment about too much parking. Get that?
okay. Well, what I was going to say, and what do we want to say about trees, if anything?
Oh,
I mean, the plans definitely show existing trees, and then I think, I mean, it was a little confusing when I looked at the online plans, not the PowerPoint presentation, where it shows existing trees, actually the word existing trees, but then there's a thing in the application about replacement trees.
see, that to me, I think that the code requires developers to include trees if there's not enough.
Well, there's more than that. There's a Crenshaw plan that's different than the specific plan. That's the streetscape plan. So, I mean, there's multiple overlaying plans that relate to trees and as well as sidewalk furniture. I mean, all those other improvements that the minute you do an improvement like this, you're suddenly required to do that too.
So why wouldn't
I think I would like to ask that by the governing board that there be a better, one more sheet that better shows us what all those requirements are and how it relates to this building, because there is the Crenshaw streetscape plan, there is the Crenshaw specific plan, there's also the general requirements that, you know, you take out one tree, you have to replace it with two. Maybe that's true for a development or not. But if we could have just one more sheet by the time the governing board votes on this, even though it'll be after the hearing.
So do you want, I just want to get some clarity about that. Do you want, because I'm looking at the ground floor plan, which was actually a crop of our larger landscape plan that did have the plant palette and call outs on it.
I don't know. I mean, what I'm saying
maybe we can talk offline and figure
right.
out.
Laura,
Look at the landscape plan.
May I suggest that we include something to the effect that as far as street trees are concerned, that any plan conform to the existing street tree design, because that from Expo up to Crenshaw was part of the Expo, and Metro paid for that.
Yes.
And there is a very specific plant tree design.
Right. Exactly.
And it would be inappropriate to come in, if they're using magnolias and palms or whatever, and you come in and plant jacarandas on your project only, would not make any sense. So it should conform to the exist.
But that's, if it's code compliance, it's code compliance. I don't know why
No, there's not a code thing, John. There's like 3 or 4 different adopted plans.
We'll look
Right.
and make sure that we're consistent with anything that is
Right.
anything that's permissible within the plans.
So between John and David, is this sort of, and Ethan, if you're all still here, is this motion sort of the consensus motion?
To me, I think it seems like it's just noting community concerns just to get in the record of a motion to support it, support the project as presented with the following
Stipulations.
Oh, I hate stipulations,
Or,
but
or considerations.
Yeah, it's not really conditions, but it's considerations.
considerations based on community concerns, something like that. I mean, obviously now we're out of order. I can't edit within chat. And then a colon, colon. What do you think?
That this tree planting be consistent with the most recent specific plan.
Well, it's called there's a Crenshaw Boulevard Streetscape plan that was adopted. It's not just about trees. I mean, the thing is, it's also about like, the crosswalks between the 2 CIM projects, and it's about the street furniture for a bus stop.
So
I mean, there was just a whole bunch of stuff that was not very long ago adopted.
So that the project conformed to the latest.
That's why I put adopted streetscape plans.
Thank you. That's fine.
Why I wrote that.
I accept that addition to my motion.
Works for me.
Well, right, but so just to be clear, because it would be a motion to support the project as presented with the following considerations based on community concerns, colon, and instead of with making, it'd be making hiring opportunities available. And as far as street trees are concerned, I could re-edit this, but it's just inserting that phrase.
And as I recall, 2 of us on the committee supported the idea of considering fewer parking stalls.
Right. Okay. And potential. Oh, wait. And I said do more EV.
And the EV, you can just say comply with current code because we're going to anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dump mine in parking stalls.
Most of these, I think, are just notations for the record.
These are just notes. These are notes. I'll pull it better together for a month from now because it's not on tomorrow night's agenda. And I apologize. I just had no idea. I mean, I check the hearing dates, but they only have them posted through January 21st or so online.
And I think it's important that the governing board hears everything that was brought up.
Yes,
regardless
no.
of the condition.
Oh, okay. I'm writing the word local hiring is, okay. So do you guys need me to make this cleaner, or do we know that I'll clean it up and put it in the right order?
I think we got it.
Good.
Yeah.
So we need a second.
Second.
Is that you, David?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, I don't get a second things on HPOZ because I'm usually typing notes, so I don't get
Like I'm doing.
This is novel for me.
Right. Yes, well, I hope Dunn never sees us do it this way because we're building a consensus motion, and that so doesn't really follow Robert's rules. It follows consensus building rules, but not Robert's rules. Okay, so the motion is, as best I can repeat it, it's a motion to support the project as presented with the following considerations based on community concerns. Then there will be a colon, and after the colon will be making local hiring opportunities available. And as far as street trees are concerned, that any project comply with existing adopted streetscape plans, semicolon, and potentially considering fewer parking stalls, period. Okay? In as best English as we possibly can do.
The only thing I say that the owner, the applicant has taken action for the local hire, so it's not a concern. It's more of a applause and so.
Right.
it's a
Well,
new-
I mean, the applicant will remember to present that in the
Yes.
5, not 10 minutes that we'll probably give you. So you'll have to do a speed presentation on the 4th.
Okay.
Now, by the way, I'm starting to get I can't attend the meeting. So if we do not achieve quorum tomorrow night, we will have a special board meeting, another one this month.
Okay.
So we may beat the clock on the hearing.
I'd like to
Okay,
call
just keep
the
me posted.
question.
Pardon, John?
I'd like to call this question. And,
Okay, that's a good idea. And again, anyone who's here may vote. I'm not sure it's good form to have Dana or Oliver vote, but technically you can. Anyway, all in favor, please raise your blue hands, except for if you're John or Laura, who are raising their real hands. So I've got 4 voting yes, 5. Okay. Any opposition? Raise your hand. And okay, seeing none. All right, motion passes. So this is a recommendation. I haven't typed it properly, but this is actually a recommendation to the UNNC governing board. So again, for the hearing purposes, Dana, if we have quorum tomorrow night, we don't have another board meeting during the course of January, all I can do at the public hearing is saying this is what we are recommending to the governing board. And I would ask that the case file be kept open long enough for us to write a letter after we vote.
Understood.
So-
I think we expected that. That's fine.
Well, you would accept it. We do have new council office, and if the zoning administration is following the pattern of recent months at hearings, they don't care if you ask for it, if I ask for it, they only care if the council office asks for it. So just, recently, that hasn't always been the case. That's been recent. All right. We are moving on. The only other thing on this agenda is follow up to previous cases, ENS and or old business. And the only thing on that is, you might have seen it on tomorrow night's agenda, but a case that was heard here in August about 1619 and 1623 Van Ness is going forward to the governing board tomorrow night. And John, you want to explain why it's now become an actual land use thing, or do I need to? About the exception.
Well, so this was a case where a developer erroneously got a permit to demolish 2 historic houses that were left off a survey for the character overlay in the
Angeles Vista.
Angeles Vista character overlay zone, and got hung up getting a demo permit. The developers, seeing the writing on the wall and recognizing that it'd be a win-win, changed the development plans from 8-unit development on 2 parcels to 6 units, preserving the 2 houses. They have since reapplied to the building and safety last month for building permits with this revised design that preserves the 2 houses. And we're looking, and we back in August, this committee voted to support the project. We did not bring it to governing board at the time, but we are now just to send a signal to new CD10 that the project is, the neighbor councils in support of the projects, especially as the project starts to get clearances, and some of which might be held up with CPIO clearances
Right.
based on the past.
Well, we also learned in getting into the, well, not me, but now me, we've learned getting into the weeds of the actual adopted CPIO character residential overlay ordinance, that they have a sort of sub PS thing, regulation, that requires less than, is it 60% of the length of the depth of a lot be construction, or no more than a certain number of feet. And it doesn't take into account that some of our lots are 200 feet deep, and some of the lots in this particular overlay are 110 feet deep. I mean, it's just nuts. It's just a crazy little PS in the ordinance itself. So this
So we
project
found-
ended up needing an exception from the regulations. And that's the land use thing.
an exception that helped preserve the two houses, but that wasn't the intent. And so what we did, we found all sorts of
Right.
planner-derived problems and conflicts within the CPIO that might actually incentivize tearing down existing structures, whether they are contributors or not. We
Right.
also don't.
Anyway, so that's, but the good news is it's going forward. And the hopefully, if this sails through the city, we can either get them to change the ordinance so that nobody else has to file for an exception, or this will become the precedent for other people who will need an exception if they're retaining an existing character historic building house in the front and wanting to build in the rear, so that we can get our additional housing constructed without having people to pay extra money and go through a process. So, okay, so that's my update. We hopefully won't take this much time talking about that tomorrow night and just again vote for it. Are there any other land use case updates? Oh, and almost all of our cases that were supposed to go to city, the community appeal cases that were supposed to go to city council last month got deferred into late this month or February. In the end, it seemed that the council district 10 exiting staff wanted to let the incoming council district 10 staff have a chance to look at and weigh in on some of these projects. So there's an HCM that's put on hold and 2 community appeals, and I'm not even sure what else. So there's going to be a bunch of other hearings toward the end of this month and in early to mid-February, where UNNC has already voted on its position. So, okay.
Thanks, everybody.
That's it.
Thanks, everyone who attended.
Thank you. And hopefully we will not find our governing board meeting tomorrow night impossible to conduct for lack of quorum, but we do apparently, unfortunately, have a couple of board members who have gotten COVID. So, I just don't, I know. I don't even know how, but they have.
Yeah, I haven't seen a soul except on Zoom for about a week and a half.
I am not even thinking the particular board members have been non-compliant. I'm thinking it's really hard to avoid exposure at this point.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
anyway.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Thanks, David.
thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Bye.
Bye, everybody.